So welcome to Building Applications in Vue 3 and Go. And what we're going to do in this course is build a web application. And here's a preview of what it's going to look like on the screen in front of us. It's a simple application that displays some of my favorite books. And as you can see, I like Stephen King and science fiction and all sorts of things. I'm a very eclectic reader. Now this is an application built in Vue 3. This is the front end, and all of this information you see on the screen is drawn from a Go backend, a REST API. And we can do things like filter from all books to horror, or we can look at science fiction, or we can go back to all. And this is very straightforward. But we're actually going to build a complete user authentication system. So we'll take care of all aspects of logging a user in, of protecting certain routes. For example, I can go to the admin menu here and choose Manage Books and look at all of the books in my library. And if I want to make a change to, say, this one, I just click on it and I can browse for a cover. And of course, there's a lot of magic happening behind the scenes here. Because we're talking to a REST API, we can't do a simple form post. Well, we could, but we're not going to. Instead, we have to take this cover that we're browsing for in our local file system and convert it to a format that can be included in a JSON post. So we'll take care of that. We'll allow for the selection of multiple categories for a book, for changing the authors, all sorts of things like that. We also have the ability to manage our users. So we can change this user's email address, passwords, set that user to active or inactive, and all of that requires using the front end written in Vue to take this form, to bind the information in this form to Vue components, and to manage it with the REST backend. So we're going to cover quite a bit in this course, and you'll have the foundation to begin building your own applications in both Vue and in Go. Now, what are we going to cover? Well, we're actually going to cover a fair bit of information. To start with, why work with Vue? Why not with Angular or React? And that would be what Vue competes with insofar as one JavaScript framework competes with another. Well, Vue 3 is one of the most popular JavaScript frameworks out there, despite being younger than both Angular and React. And it's popular for very good reasons. It has an incredibly simple development model, but it's incredibly powerful. So it's much easier to learn than Angular or React, at least for most developers. It also results in projects that are extremely easy to maintain, and that is critical, particularly when you're working with a large project. It also has a very large development community, and it has a lot of resources you can draw upon. Pre-built components you can incorporate into your own code. Now, we're not going to use many pre-built components. We're going to figure out how to build Vue components ourselves. And we're going to do that because it's important to understand how things work. Now, in terms of popularity, at the time that I record this, Vue has it's just verging on 200,000 stars on GitHub. Angular, in contrast, has about 80,000, and React only has 184,000, which is a lot. They're all very popular frameworks, but as you can see, even though it's younger, Vue is becoming one of the most popular JavaScript frameworks out there. And not only is it more popular, in most cases, when you build an application in Vue, you wind up with something that is smaller. In other words, there's less code to transfer to the end user's web browser. And it's also faster than the same application written in either React or Angular. Go, in turn, has quickly become the go-to choice for developers who are working on either REST APIs or any kind of network application, and with good reason. It's extremely easy to learn, it's type-safe, it's compiled, it handles concurrency extremely well, and it can be written for a wide variety of operating systems. You actually don't need to install a runtime on any machine where you want to run an application written in Go. You can write it, for example, on a Macintosh, and then compile it for the Mac or for Windows or for Linux with one command in the terminal. It's also very, very fast, and that's important for any web application. Now, what we're going to cover in this course? Well, we're going to cover both the Options API and the Composition API in Vue. And if you're not familiar with what that is, don't worry. I'll go over them in detail. When Vue 3 was released, they actually kept the Options API, which was the standard way of writing applications in Vue since the first version, but they also introduced something called the Composition API. And it's relatively new, but it's also extremely powerful. And I suspect that over time, it will become the default API used by developers around the world. But since there are millions of lines of code written in the Options API, that's where we'll start. And later on in the course, we'll actually take our application and convert parts of it to use the Composition API. So by the time you finish this course, you'll know how to use both. We'll cover building a data store in Vue, which is important, as well as how to implement the Vue router so we can get around the various pages of our single-page application. And that's what we're going to build, a SPA, or a single-page application that connects to a back-end API written in Go and has a Postgres database where we store all the information about our books and authors and genres and so on and so forth. We'll also cover all aspects of user authentication, and we'll also learn how to protect certain routes in our application so they're only accessible to logged-in users. So we're going to cover a great deal of information, and by the time you're finished this course, you'll have enough information at your disposal to build your own highly interactive web applications backed by a fast, stable, and secure API written in Go. So let's get started.